Few things are as divisive, yet absolute, as the preferences of a coffee fan. If you asked a coffee lover, not just a drinker, but an actual coffee connoisseur, what their favorite coffee is, you're bound to get a million different responses, all as emphatic as the last. So picture this. It's the early 2000s, and you are one such coffee obsessive. Like so many millions of coffee drinkers, you're stuck with cheap drip machines, subpar French presses, or espresso setups more expensive than your first car. And the worst part? None of them deliver exactly what you want. It's too bitter. Brewing is too slow. Cleaning is almost as painful as the sharp edge of over-extraction. It's all just less than perfect. And in the mind of an engineer, perfection isn't a nice to have. It's a goal, an attainable quality. That's it. You've had enough. It's time to get serious about the Java. And in the process, revolutionize the way millions consume coffee. Welcome to Story of the Thing, a weekly podcast that dives into the true stories of the things that fill our lives. My name is Christopher Sandoval. I'm a product marketing and developer relations expert, and today, I'm your host. Today's story: how an engineer's obsession revolutionized coffee for millions. Let's get into the story of the thing. The road to better coffee didn't actually begin with the drink. It started with Frisbees. In 1938, a young boy by the name of Alan Adler was born in Detroit, Michigan. It was clear from day one that Alan was a different kind of child. He was deeply curious, developing a habit of taking apart anything that he could to understand how the things around him worked. Quickly, his parents realized that if something in the house was missing, it was probably sitting on Alan's workbench in so many pieces. By the age of 13, he had already built his first invention. The device was designed to measure small displacements in structures. And when he would later explain the invention to an engineer, he was told that the device already existed in the form of a strain gauge, an extremely useful tool that had in fact been invented in 1938, the same year that Alan was born. This was just the start of Alan's curiosity and inventiveness. As he grew older, Alan voraciously consumed everything he could get his hands on, building electronics, sailboats, and other complex structures. And this is where his first huge product success came. Before we continue, we should quickly tell another story. While the specifics of the story are hotly debated, so hotly debated, in fact, that it has been the subject of numerous lawsuits, I'll try my best to meld the competing narratives into a single tale. In Bridgeport, Connecticut, students at local universities had taken to a particularly interesting pastime. Ever the starving collegiates, the students voraciously consumed pies. And once they were done with their delicious snack, they were left with an empty pie tin. While most disposed of these pie tins like any other item of garbage, some took to throwing them, finding that they were uniquely suited to a game of catch. Over time, these pie tins would be accompanied by the name of the pie company who manufactured them, and thus the players would shout, "Frisbee," to warn people that their Frisbee Pie Company tin was flying in their direction. Meanwhile, on the West Coast, an inventor by the name of Walter Frederick Morrison had his own food-related epiphany. While tossing the lid to a popcorn can with his girlfriend, Lucille Eleanor Ney, he grew frustrated as the lid became dented and unstable. He tried a few other items that he had laying around, and soon discovered that cake pans flew better, and were far easier to find than the less common popcorn lid. He started playing his game of catch with his girlfriend using these cake tins, and while tossing the disc on a Santa Monica beach, a bystander offered to buy the tin from the pair for 25 cents. That's $6 today. Morrison would later say that this is what got him interested in monetizing the concept, saying, "You could buy a cake pan for 5 cents, and if people on the beach were willing to pay a quarter for it, well, there was a business." Walter would serve in World War II as a P-47 Thunderbolt pilot. Notably, he was held as a prisoner of war in Germany for 48 days. After he returned to the United States, he revisited the flying disc idea. And in 1946, he drew up plans for a disc he called the Whirlaway. After sales for this toy were disappointing, despite being renamed to the much better Flying Saucer, Fred was convinced that he could make a better design that had more mass appeal. In 1955, his once girlfriend and now wife joined him in designing this new toy, the Pluto Platter, which they sold to toy company Wham-O. By June of 1957, Wham-O had learned that college students in the Northeast were playing with a similar item, calling their toy a Frisbee. And from that point on, Wham-O marketed the Frisbee to great fanfare and great success. Now there's an interesting twist to this story that, believe it or not, has become a professional sport. A worker by the name of Edward Steady Ed Hedrick saw something more in the Frisbee game, something more than just idle games of catch. After he was tasked with finding a use for the excess plastic left over from the production of hula hoops, he redesigned the Frisbee disc to be more aerodynamic and balanced. This design would become the final official design of the Frisbee. And as for Steady Ed, he would leave Wham-O to form the Disc Golf Association, DGA, creating a professional sport that has worldwide fans. Of course, that wasn't the last innovation that the Frisbee concept would see. No. In fact, the Frisbee takes us back to one Alan Adler. In the 1970s, Alan Adler began his effort to improve the flying disc. Ever the tinkerer, he looked at the design of the Frisbee and, influenced by his interest in fluid and aerodynamics, thought that he could improve the core flight characteristics, making it fly farther and with greater stability. He started by trying to streamline the shape of the Frisbee, but found that, while this reduced drag, it significantly reduced stability. Instead of changing the basic shape, he instead tried to reduce the weight of the disc and alter the shape of the rim itself, thereby inventing a flying disc he called the Skyro. The design was amazing. It exceeded his wildest expectations. And after successfully launching the product to the market, he saw it used to set a Guinness World Record throw of 261 meters. That's 856 feet. Adler wasn't done tinkering, though. See, the Skyro had some issues. It was exceptionally stable up to a certain speed, but once that speed was hit, the stability disappeared. Adler tried new designs, eventually designing a spoiler rim which would generate additional lift across a wide profile of speeds. He spent months testing and retesting until he discovered the optimum profile for his flying disc, a disc that he now called the Aerobie. The design was a success, both in terms of revenue and in terms of flight characteristics. To give you a sense of how good this disc was, it would ultimately become the first object to be thrown by a human across Niagara Falls. Of course, I'm sure you're all asking yourself one question. What does this have to do with coffee? Well, let's get back on track and jump forward to that part of the story. It's clear by now that Alan Adler is a particular kind of person. He's not just one to accept the way things are. When he sees something that he feels is broken, he becomes obsessed, almost consumed, with optimizing the solution. I told you that background to help you get into the head of Alan Adler. You're a Stanford engineering lecturer. You're a famous inventor. You have patents under your name and paper citations like you wouldn't believe. You're a creator, an obsessive who focuses on improving the things in your life. But through it all, one thing has kept you going. Coffee. Good coffee. But the problem is that Alan didn't think his coffee was particularly good. It was too acidic, too bitter. He tried all kinds of brewing methods, and although he had to settle for good enough during his quest for the best flying ring, he never really thought that his coffee was good enough. There was just something in the back of his brain that told him it could be better, that there was a fix. and he just had to find it. In 2003, Adler finally reached his breaking point. He had had enough of his garbage daily coffee. Something had to be done. So he started prototyping. And prototype he did. He spent countless hours iterating and testing and experimenting. He worked tirelessly, testing Triton, polycarbonate, polypropylene, testing everything from heat retention to durability to ease of cleaning. And after 30 or 40 designs, he felt he had a good working prototype. But now, he needed a method. He tried everything he could to improve the brewing method. He tested different pours, grind settings, water temperatures. He finally figures out a design and a method. A cylinder shape with a plunger. It's a sort of coffee press that uses air like an AeroPress? He nods and says to himself he should keep that name in mind. In November of 2005, Adler unveils the newly minted AeroPress. First reactions are largely mixed. Some coffee enthusiasts are skeptical that the method and the device could be that superior to traditional methods. A hunk of plastic and a weird process seemed like a flashy gimmick rather than a revolution in coffee quality. But then, the skeptics try it, and they're converted almost on the spot. The device is fast. It allows for rapid brewing that somehow has the speed of espresso, but the smoothness of a pour-over. And unlike espresso, there's no complex machinery. And unlike the pour-over, there's no ridiculous cleanup. It's easy to use, flexible, fast, and most importantly, the coffee is smooth, full-bodied, and delicious. The device is curious, and soon, that curiosity turns into a full-blown cult following. AeroPress becomes known not just as a brewer, but as a platform for creativity. You can tweak water temp, brew time, grind, use inverted methods. A huge change from the rather straightforward and at times stuffy nature of coffee at the time. This was coffee, but punk rock. By 2008, the first AeroPress Championship is held in Oslo, Norway. There were just 3 participants, including the event organizer. But today, it's a network of events across more than 60 countries with over 6,000 competitors. The humble AeroPress itself, which started as an obsessive quest for better coffee in an engineer's garage, has now sold over 6 million units. In 2025, and a surprise to absolutely nobody, we find AeroPress and Alan innovating with new products and designs. Since the initial release of the AeroPress, several models have been released, including the portable AeroPress Go, a double-capacity model called the AeroPress XL, and a full-glass model called the AeroPress Premium, amongst others. AeroPress still generates considerable coverage. From coffee probe James Hoffman to features in The Guardian, the AeroPress is still a mainstay in the coffee world, and it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere fast. So what can we learn from this story? I think we can take away 3 big lessons. The first is that innovation is contagious. Passionate work on a problem can inspire everything from competitions to community growth. People who care about something tend to obsess about it. And this obsession can be channeled into some amazing things when product is the focus. The second big takeaway is that better isn't always about volume. At the time of the AeroPress, maximalism was in. We're talking about the era of Windows Vista and the T-Mobile Sidekick. But when Alan focused on making something better, he didn't focus on getting more coffee or getting that coffee as quickly as possible. He focused on making it better. Quality over quantity. And perhaps most importantly, this is a lesson about where innovation comes from. Alan didn't start with some grand ambition. He started with dissatisfaction. He asked simply, why can't this be better? And that's something we've seen before. From the iPod to email, innovation that has focused on making human life better almost always seems to pan out in the end. And in 2025, where every company ends in AI and people are more frustrated than ever, we need a little bit of Alan's mindset in us all. A better cup, a better tool, a better experience. That was Alan Adler's mission. I'd like to thank you for listening to this story. If you love coffee, or just stories about people chasing their obsession, share the story with your friends and colleagues. If you've had a cup from an AeroPress in the last week, let me know in the comments what you thought of it, and whether you think it holds up to Alan's dreams. And for you in the audience, I have to ask, what is your cup of coffee? I want you to really think, what is the thing that you find lacking in your life? And are you the person to fix it? Because behind every AeroPress, there's an Alan, innovating and making the rest of our lives better. And that could be you. Your passion could unlock the next big thing. And who knows? Maybe someday you'll serve as an inspiration for another innovator, another inventor, someone who just learned that their favorite product was born out of an obsessive quest for quality. All it takes is for you to make that first step, to begin your involvement in the story of the thing.